Well, the big story, a massive breakthrough in two trial vaccines, one at Oxford, the other in Wuhan. These have been peer-reviewed and a detailed publication, in fact two, have been brought out by Lancet, one of the world's foremost healthcare journals, medical journals. But let's give you some of the details on what exactly it is that they are saying. First, on the Oxford vaccine trial. So here's what they are saying. Experts say that the vaccine is safe and that it is well tolerated. Extremely encouraging results so far in the trials thus far. No serious adverse reactions have been reported. A majority of adverse events are mild or moderate in severity in the Oxford vaccine being developed. A single dose elicits an increase in antibodies by day 28, neutralizing antibodies in participants after a booster dose. So they do speak about a booster dose as well. Further studies to assess it in various population groups is required. The vaccine candidate was safe, tolerated, and immunogenic as well. So those are a couple of points as far as the Oxford vaccine are concerned. Let's talk about the Wuhan vaccine and let's bring those up on the screen. Experts say that it does induce a humoral and cellular response in 14 days. They say that there are no serious adverse reactions. This was a 602-person trial in Wuhan, so somewhat smaller than the Oxford trial, but there was a significant immune response in most participants. The immune response was triggered after a single immunization. So joining us now to look at these major breakthroughs or peer-reviewed analysis of these vaccine candidates, Dr. V.K. Paul, Chairman of the Board of Governors of the Medical Council of India and member of the Niti Aayog. Eric Fiegelding is one of the world's finest epidemiologists and a health economist at Public Health at Harvard. Thanks very much for joining us. Deepak Paliwal joins us as well. He's actually been a volunteer for the Oxford COVID vaccines. Deepak, I must come to you first. We were speaking with you yesterday, but you must be relieved that you were one of those who participated as a volunteer in the trials for the Oxford vaccine. Now peer-reviewed documents appear which show that it's a big thumbs up. Still some work to go, but I think it's clear that we are headed in the right direction.
Exactly, Vishnu. I think what 24 hours can make a difference from hope to a little bit of happiness and success. So I'm happy that I was a small part of this trial. And we have seen that how within 28 days, the antibody level peaked, as well as it got an effect on T cells, which peaked in 14 days. So some of the beautiful, awesome results, we can say.
Eric Fiegelding, two reports out today by Lancet, one on Oxford, one on the Wuhan trials going on. Let's talk about both. Do you believe that in the future, at the rate of progress that we are now seeing, this could bring the hope that millions around the world, in fact billions around the world, have been looking for?
Yeah, I think these two vaccines are very hopeful. They're still early phase vaccines. One's a phase 1, phase 2, others a phase 2. But given what we see, especially in the Oxford trial, it shows both antibody response as well as T cell response, which is very different immune responses. And I think that bodes well for potentially a long-term protection against the vaccine, not just based on the antibodies alone. And I think with that, again, it seems you get these really good results so far, up to 56 days. Maybe or maybe not with a booster, depends. We will have to see in a phase 3 trial, but things are looking very optimistic.
Okay. Dr. Paul, for us over here in India, the fact that we've got the Serum Institute, which is in a position to churn out millions of vials in double quick time, means that once this is ready, at least the Oxford vaccine is ready, and assuming that it is ultimately, it works to plan, then how soon do you believe we'd be in a position to distribute it here in India?
Firstly, I would say today is a very special day. As you said very correctly, it gladdens the heart of millions and billions of people. This could be an important beginning to have the final victory against the virus. Two encouraging reports in one day are very, very heartening truly. And for India, the fact that the Oxford vaccine will be manufactured in India, and if need be, the phase 3 trials will also be conducted in India by the Serum Institute with a special agreement for supplies into India as well as in Gavi countries, is therefore doubly happy incident for the day. Yes, you are right. Yes, the serum has tremendous capacity to build a stockpile in time, and it would be possible for us to look after the needs of the country as well as other nations if the requirement happens. At the same time, as the eminent speaker before me very aptly said, yes, the journey is still a long way to go. There will be uncertainties. We must remember that quest for very special vaccines such as the malaria vaccine and HIV vaccine have really not been successful. But I think the results are truly encouraging. They explain how the vaccine could be protective. So it's a great beginning, a very, very optimistic day today.
Okay. Dr. Fiegelding, how much longer realistically before anybody could say that, yes, let's start mass manufacture of either of these two vaccines?
So the question depends on your audience. Is it a healthcare workers or the general population? And the Oxford group says that because right now they're already in the middle of their phase 3 trial in Brazil. This Oxford vaccine is already under testing in Brazil. That healthcare workers could get it by the fall, maybe October, maybe September, we're not sure, but by the fall. And the general population, assuming the phase 3 trial, which takes much longer, pans out well, then potentially in the winter, spring to 2021.
Why does the phase 3 trial take longer for our audience? Could you explain?
So the phase 3 trial studies a larger population and wants to see, can it prevent the infection? All these early trials that we today report are basically testing your body's cellular response to the vaccine. There's no actual test of will it actually prevent the coronavirus from getting sick, from dying, all these different things. And so this is why a phase 3, you need a massive number of people and you have to follow them for much, much longer. And that's what takes time. But that will tell us, again, the long-term safety, efficacy in different groups of people, and again, overall, does it prevent the illness?
Yep. Mr. Paliwal, when you were injected with this trial vaccine, was there any impact? Were there any symptoms? Was there any fever?
It was just like a normal vaccination, let's say hepatitis 1. There was a little bit of swelling and maybe a little fever by the evening. But then for rest 29 days, which is the main time for the vaccine to develop antibodies, it was just like a normal human, like a normal day for me.
And there wasn't any extraordinary pain. It's an intramuscular injection. So there was an element of swelling, but that's expected in many of these injections, right?
Yes, it was quite normal. It was just like a normal vaccination, and it was I think a well-planned trial. And the way they have done the follow-up for like 29 days, the e-diaries to be filled in and sent it. It's, I think, some great work done by Oxford
Dr.
University.
Paul, one of the points mentioned in the Oxford report was that a lot more needed to be done to geographically and genetically spread out the vaccine to get a clearer idea of whether it works on people of different races, people of different backgrounds, different geographies. Therefore, is that something that concerns you, that the signs are good, but then there are genetic and very critical genetic variations among all of us, and therefore some more time is needed to see whether it works as effectively on people around the world?
Well, yes, indeed, because for a given vaccine to be effective, it is an interplay of what the antigen does in the body, but also depends on the host response. Now, the host responses are governed by genetics. They are governed also by previous experience of similar infections or other factors which may have had a lasting effect on the way the immune response happens in a particular individual or particular class of individuals.
Right.
And therefore, it is important that when the phase 3 trials are carried out, they are carried out in diverse populations. And in that regard, I think again, India is truly lucky because having a industry partner already in the country, and also already the efforts and the rollout of the preparation for preparing field areas, vaccine trial sites has already been underway for some time in collaboration with the industry and the initiative taken by the Government of India. So we are ready for mounting a trial in the Indian population in the context of the Indian host and the Indian genome. We are lucky, but your point is truly valid that yes, vaccines may have a different propensity in different populations.
Yeah. Dr. Fiegelding, what about the entire issue of price, the entire issue of cost? There's a big concern that if this is indeed the magic bullet, it's going to be very expensive for some and affordable for others around the world.
I think ultimately AstraZeneca, which is the production partner for this vaccine with Oxford, they said that they would do it at cost, and they're also in partnership with Gavi, which is the vaccine consortium for developing countries. And so I think Gavi and the consortiums will make sure that it is relatively affordable. The issue is who gets the first batches of production, and that I fear may go to some of the investors or the companies that funded it, because this trial was also part of the Operation Warp Speed that was the U.S. government has also committed to the Oxford Vaccine Group. So I fear there's an early access issue that might be a little bit unjust, unfortunately. Yeah. But I feel long term it will be available at a more reasonable cost for everyone.
Right. And just a last question to you, Dr. Fiegelding. The booster dose, and there's been mention of this in the Oxford report. I must confess I haven't had time to go through the Wuhan report. It's just come out a few hours back. How important is that? Do you believe that that would be necessary, certainly in the Oxford case, perhaps also in the Wuhan case?
Yeah, it's interesting. The Wuhan did not test the booster. The Wuhan had a high, medium, and placebo. And the medium dose seemed just as good as the high dose. And so it seemed to have a good effects over a month. And in the Oxford booster, they found that the first dose was good up, for 56 days, but the peak of it, the response was at 28 days. But if you boosted it at 28 days, it brought up the antibody levels to the same levels as the convalescent plasma you find in many existing COVID patients who recovered. So whether you need it long term, we're not sure. That remains to be seen.
Dr. Paul, one final question to you. Assuming things work out, and I think we're all a lot more optimistic than we were a few months back when we started reporting all of this. How does one physically in a country as large as India go about the business of inoculating an entire population, even if you actually have the vaccines available? I mean, that by itself must be a nightmarish process.
Well, it is a unique situation because this is a vaccine for adult population in particular, and perhaps the entire population. Our vaccine programs are typically targeted to children. There is a certain way of reaching the children. In any case, it's usually a cohort of about 2.5 crore children who get about 5 or 6 doses in the first year of their life. So it is a different ballgame altogether, and we have to be working out different strategies to reach. But I must say the work on thinking through these processes has already begun. You may also keep in mind that in one single go, 1 billion doses are not going to be available. There will be a finite number of doses to begin with. The stockpiles will build. will be built, the supply chains would start to work, and therefore, at least in the initial stages, there will have to be some kind of a prioritization. That seems to be the way forward. For example, those who are at a higher risk of infection, specifically the healthcare worker, the frontline worker, people with comorbidities, old people, may be the early candidates to receive the vaccine. We also will have to see if people have already experienced a disease in real life. What do you do? These are right now unknowns. But as we move along, we are preparing our thinking around how the supply chains will be built, how the cold chain will have to be prepared, and how to go about vaccinating a very large number of people. But remember, we have the analogy of conducting great elections.
Right. So I think a lot of those skills we're going to have to use to make it work. I'd like to thank all of you very much for joining us. It's not often that there's something happy to be about when one speaks about COVID, but today is a day when there is real hope. It's not a done deal 100% as yet, but I think there's more than a good possibility of this really being what we've been looking for. Thank you all very much for joining us.